Hello and welcome to the latest webinar in the Elemental Talks programme. Our topic today, reducing the cost of net zero system improvements for low carbon heating. This is the 5th session in our Zero Carbon Home series, broadcast throughout this month in partnership with BEAMA, the UK Trade Association for Manufacturers and Providers of Energy Infrastructure Technologies and Systems. Chair for the next 60 minutes, my name is Jim McClelland, founder and editor of SustMeme, home to both the magazine and the top 500 rankings. Joining me on the panel this morning are Steve Sutton, Technical Manager at the Heating and Hot Water Industry Council, HHIC, Neil Watson, Chief Technical Officer, AD Professional Heating Solutions, Mike Jones, Key Account Manager, Danfoss, and Colin Timmins, Director of Building Technologies at BEAMA. It is all live. Q&A to finish, so please pop your questions in the appropriately named Ask a Question box. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. You type them in there as we go along, and towards the end then you pose them, I'll ask them, they'll answer them. So this webinar forms part of a programme of talks hosted and produced by elementalexpo.com. I'll give you a little bit of background. It's the online community for professionals focused on innovation, heat, water, air and energy, the vital elements within the built environment now and in the future. You can find the full diary of events both on the website and on the Elemental Crowdcast page. Range of upcoming webinars, 2 more sessions in the Zero Carbon Home series of BEAMA, that's tomorrow and Wednesday, all supported by Glen Dimplex, Drayton Controls, Valent UK, Lucy Electric, Schneider Electric and AD. You can also view the back catalogue, broad range of hot topics, every webinar so far in the series with BEAMA, all available on demand, as this will be as soon as we've finished, so you can share the same link for others to review or to review any bits you missed yourselves immediately after we've finished today. Great who's who list of speakers and everything is free to access. So, brief intro from me, reducing the cost of net zero system improvements for low carbon heating. We know system improvements can significantly reduce the cost of low carbon heating. It's vital though that we look at a strategy to optimise control and the efficient operation of UK residential systems as part of wider plans for retrofit programs. It's not just about installation of retrofit though, but about the longer term maintenance, servicing of our homes to ensure not only that efficiency is optimized to shrink customer bills, but also that those treasured emission savings are actually guaranteed and locked in for the future. In all, measures to improve system efficiency have the potential to cut current gas consumption for heating and hot water by 22%. That's over a fifth. And our talk today will draw on 2 key recent papers, and the links for those are already helpfully in the chat if you want to follow up and read them in detail later. So from BEAMA, we've got Thinking Outside the Boiler, how improved heat distribution systems could significantly reduce the cost of low carbon heating. Plus, from the Heating and Hot Water Industry Council, a white paper, Heating Up to Net Zero and how to prepare systems for the future. As I mentioned, today's session is actually the 5th in our Super 7 on Zero Carbon Homes with BEAMA and Elemental, a series of deep dive talks on the drive to retrofit by 2050, low carbon heating, net zero targets, all of the above. The reality is though, we face a big delivery challenge, and these talks debate the options for our sector as we harness opportunities to cut emissions, but also to improve home health and well-being. So enough from me, right? Let the talks begin. So as we start to explore reducing the cost of net zero, I'd like to begin by asking our panel to introduce themselves, share some opening insights around the strategy and the recent research papers, the wider market, the need for a greater focus on energy efficiency, heating systems in general. To kick us off then, first Steve. Steve, the HHIC paper looks at the work that needs to be done to get systems ready for low carbon heating and hot water. What are the key takeaways you can share with us, please?
Yeah, okay, John. As you said, the white paper is titled Heating Up to Net Zero UK Domestic Heating and Hot Water Systems and How to Prepare Them for a Greener Future. And the paper has been prepared by our systems group, and this includes the members of the Heating and Hot Water Industry Council, the Hot Water Association, and the Manufacturers Association of Radiators and Convectors, MARC. So we've gone across the industry to try and have input into the paper. The paper explains that improvements to domestic heating and hot water can contribute to the UK's energy transition as it strives to achieve net zero by 2050. Moving our homes to lower carbon technologies like heat pumps and hydrogen boilers will be key to meeting this target, as too will wider community schemes like district heating. Hybrid approaches that use heat pumps alongside gas boilers will also play an important role, as they can help to drastically lower emissions in properties that are more difficult to treat. It is a good transition technology that can be used alongside low carbon fuels and introduction of improvements over time, such as insulation and new radiators. There is a view that the heating system in our homes are not adequately covered by strategy and policy work. The white paper aims to change that. It looks what works well, where improvements need to be made, and how different domestic systems can be aligned with the country's long-term climate change. So future-proofing heating and hot water systems for the future. The challenges the UK face are clear. For example, just known that fewer than 9 million homes now have a hot water storage appliance, and many radiators may need to be replaced for the transition to high efficiency, low carbon heating systems. We want to encourage homeowners to start this transition, and for example, I've included encouraging homeowners to retain the hot water cylinder because we think they will be likely be needed in the future. The paper focuses on the core technical requirements of the heating system, including heat loss calculations, radiator sizing, and we've sort of highlighted 3 key fabric improvements that are key in this as well. So double glazing, 25 mil of wall insulation, and a minimum of 200 mil loft insulation. We think there is around, looking at the papers and studies that are out there, so we think probably over 80% of people have got double glazing, and that is probably down to the fact that it looks better and you don't have to paint it, rather than the insulation improvements that it gives, but you get those as well. We think there's just over 40% of people have got 25 millimeters of wall insulation, so there's still some improvements to be made there. And although people have got loft insulation in quite a high proportion, there's probably only just over 30% with them, with what we think should be the minimum of 200 mil of insulation. So the paper goes into this in quite some detail, and we think it's been quite well received by the across the industry. And that's over to whoever's next year.
Excellent, thanks, Steve. No, good to hear for start cross-industry collaboration in terms of the input. Good mention for transition technologies, because it's a question of a journey in some cases, but of course future-proofing and the 3 key fabric improvements: double glazing, wall and loft insulation. Interesting to hear that although there is good penetration into the market with wall and loft insulation, there's still room for improvement. It's not as if that is all done and dusted in every case. So now, Colin, if we could come to you, the BEAMA paper looks at the potential benefits of making system improvements now. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the thinking and the numbers behind this, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think our paper is complementary to the one from HHIC, and the main thrust of it really is to look at the fact that we've got, I think it's about 23 million homes currently heated with a gas boiler. So the amount of gas that's being used in our homes for heating and hot water is about 26 million tonnes of oil equivalent. And obviously the plan for getting to net zero is to replace that. And government's looking at hydrogen, at heat pumps and heat networks. But all of these have an infrastructure cost. So what we've tried to do is to look at the system improvements and say, right, if you apply these system improvements properly, get the full benefit out of them, how much of that amount of gas do you actually need to displace? How much less do you need to displace with all of these new fuels? So we did some calculation. We've looked at the data that's out there. We've got some research ourselves we've done, and there's a lot of research studies out there. But if you look at heating controls, at load and weather compensation, at room temperature controls and smart controls, look at system balancing and commissioning and low temperature systems, all things that we know are good practice and should be happening. But by looking at what's been done and what hasn't been done, we've calculated from that we could reduce the amount of gas being used by about 22% now. If you take that a bit further and you look at the fabric energy efficiency using figures from the Committee on Climate Change, changing the way that we do hot water, and that's something that Steve touched on and we'll probably come on to, but doing hot water in a different way, as well as the system improvements, then we get a figure for about 53%. So that's really saying the potential is there to take away half of the gas that we're currently using. And therefore, when government is investing in a hydrogen infrastructure or the electricity infrastructure for heat pumps, then you could potentially halve the cost that you need to invest to do that. So what we're saying is really they need to look much more closely at systems and what can be done. It's less infrastructure. And the advantage is all these things provide energy efficiency benefits to the consumer now, because they'll all apply to existing systems, and largely they're consistent with future systems. You'll get the same benefits in those future systems, and you'll be making them ready. So it was noticeable that the heat and building strategy talked about no regrets option. I think work on systems is very much a no regrets option, and it's something we should be starting right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Colin. And no regrets. I mean, huge numbers, as you said, sort of maybe 23 million homes on gas, 26 million tons oil equivalent. Well, then a few intelligent calculations about what can we do and how can we do it better. So the gap between the 22% and the 53% is a huge opportunity, really, for us to look at finessing and improving, and gets us over that 50% marker figure. And a good mention of heating controls. We've already had one of the sessions in the BEAMA series on exactly that, heating controls, looking at load and weather compensation, etc. So if you're interested in more on that, do check the back catalogue as well. So really good stuff already in play. Now, Mike, coming to you. So the fact is, building regs already have requirements for balancing and commissioning of boilers. It exists. So how can we get installers to actually focus more on meeting these?
I think, to be honest, I think it's an awareness. It's an awareness side of thing. There was a very interesting number in the low carbon heat distributions paper, I think, where it said that after a survey, most installers don't have a common understanding of hydraulic balancing, with only 18% claiming to undertake it as a standard practice. And considering there are, as you say, there's requirements in legislation that it be completed, or that commissioning a boiler is done, and we have the benchmarks logbook there to validate that. There is now a little section in the benchmarks logbook, a little tick box to say that the system has been correctly balanced upon installation. But I think it's understanding the definition of balancing a heating system for a lot of the installers. So it may be a training or an awareness issue. I speak to heating installers day in, day out. It's part of my job, and the number of responses I get to "do you balance a heating system" can widely vary from "absolutely, I do it religiously and spend 2 hours balancing this every system I install" to another chap saying, "well, I just make sure each of the radiators gets hot before I leave." And the balancing of a heating system is such a critical part of ensuring that you get the maximum efficiency out of your boiler. A correctly and well-balanced heating system will make sure that all of the radiators in the system get up to temperature at the same time. You don't end up with cold spots in the house, radiators that are starved for heat. And I think in terms of how we get installers to focus on this, we try and make the process simpler for them, without wanting to go down the rabbit hole of how systems are balanced. The traditional method of using a lock shield is time consuming. It does take a while, and it realistically balances that heating system at full load. So you do it for the coldest day with everything running. Our heating systems don't run like that. You've got rooms that are up to temperature. You have partial load for the majority of the time. So really, it's investing from an installer's point of view in understanding. From manufacturers, it's producing products to make the balancing of a heating system easier, more reliable, and also consumer awareness, I think, comes into it. There's a lot of talk in the news about new developments and what we're going to do with heat pumps and how to make your houses efficient. I think understanding, for those of us that are in a house and haven't got any plans to move, what we can do as consumers to make sure we're getting the best out of our system. We focus at Danfoss quite a lot on talking to the social landlords, social housing providers, to try and explain the benefits of having their systems balanced at install and during service calls, to ensure it assists. You save gas, you're saving cost. So it all has a knock-on effect to reducing CO2 emissions. But from a tenant's or a homeowner's point of view, if you're saving 60, 70 quid a year, let's say on your gas bill, because your heating system's balanced and running efficiently, it's a win-win.
Okay, excellent. And I think interesting to see that, the figure of awareness of 18%, not even 1 in 5 then. I wonder if I could ask just a quick follow-on then. Is the industry aware of this lack of awareness? You know, is the industry responding, or is it a bit of a blind spot? Does the industry just not know what the industry doesn't know? Mike?
I think, it's a difficult one. I think everybody knows what they should be doing, but there are limitations, shall we say. It may be cost, it may be time. I think from a private installer's point of view, if you do religiously, let's say, balance a heating system the traditional way, and it takes you an additional hour or two to do that, from a business point of view, they may come out more expensive than a competitor who doesn't. I think it's a very difficult one to get. Hence, I really want to focus on making balancing simpler.
Cool.
You know, and focusing on how you can do that. You could use presetting TRVs. You can use flow limiting TRVs to essentially preset, so you don't need to balance on the lock shield. It's all done at the point of install. You know, that's one way of addressing that.
Excellent. So make it easier and simpler and try and avoid that problem area. Nice point. So now, Neil, if I come to you, similarly, really, some of the other systems improvements highlighted are low temperature distribution and water treatment. Again, can we just leave these to building regs to deliver the kind of upgrades we need?
Wouldn't it be great to be able to sit here and say, yes, yeah, our work is done. So the real answer is, well, no, we can't, although building regulations are a very, very good start and they're a good place to be. With regards to those specific measures, when you're looking at low temperature heating, for example, there are additional requirements needed for water treatment. We're looking at systems that run at 50, 55, which is the temperature range where bacteria will grow. So consequently, there's a greater need to look at biocides. And that's something that the traditional heating installer who has been used to installing high temperature systems wouldn't even have necessarily needed to think about. And that's something that isn't necessarily covered very well within building regulations. In fact, it isn't covered at all at this point in time. But we've tried to make some provision for that within the new building regulations, Part L, that we're all still waiting for. Those building regulations, there are improvements coming through from the discussions that industry have had. So, for example, in the current building regulations, the one that we should still be working to now until these new ones come through, if you look at the water treatment requirements across the different range of heating appliances, be that a heat pump or a boiler or a heat distribution network, they're all different. They've all been written in a different way. But at least with the new building regulations coming through, there's an attempt to pull those together and make that understanding that the water treatment, for example, treats the system. It doesn't treat the appliance per se. So therefore, the requirements for water treatment remain, whether you've got a heat pump fitted or a heat interface unit or a boiler. Those requirements within the heating system remain, and that's really, really important to understand. Now, so it's great that we're making those mods to building regs to make it a little bit easier for people to follow. But even though water treatment itself, the use of a cleaner and inhibitor have been in building regulations for quite a long time, they're still not very well used. If we look at the stats that are generated within the trade associations, it's still only around about 50 to 70% of people still don't use water treatment products. Specifically cleaners, people don't clean out systems that when they're supposed to clean out systems. And it's the sludge within the heating system that generates a lot of your energy efficiency issues. In fact, it's very interesting because NEEDS put out a report over the summer. That's the National Energy Efficiency Data Framework. In June, they put a report out, which actually shows that in real life systems, you're getting a 10% fall off in efficiency of a heating system over that first 5 years after installation. And that's something that you would not expect to see if there was the correct water treatment within those heating systems. Building regulations as well promotes uptake within new build, but not necessarily within the one-off installers. So the requirements that you get for using water treatment aren't policed by building inspection. So until you get to the point where some of these measures are policed, you're still going to get a low uptake. One of the great initiatives that industry has come up with over the last year or so has been the digital benchmark, and that will require appliance manufacturers to treat that as a requirement for warranty. And within that, it's very much set in stone that the installer needs to follow the water treatment requirements laid out in building regulations, which come from BS 7593. So if the manufacturers really get behind this, and it's looking very much like they are, then that will help to drive the compliance with building regs.
Excellent, thank you. Some nice statistics in there. Of course, I mentioned for waiting for building regs, which makes waiting for Godot look like a pretty quick job. And of course, the existing building regs, it's about them being used and policed. You know, it's not just that they have to exist; they have to be actively used and applied across the board. So we're beginning to get now, thank you, into some of the challenges. And in this next section, I would remind audience, I see already some comments and questions coming in the chat. If you'd pop them in the ask a question box at the bottom, that would be excellent, and we'll come round to them after the next round. But this round, I'd like to dig a bit deeper still and get into some of the real thorny issues. So zooming on specifics, deep dive, optimization. So Steve, to start us again, the HHIC paper highlights issues with micro-bore pipework. Are the systems being installed now simply not ready for future heating?
Yeah, I think, Jim, this is probably a little bit historic. If we go back in time, we've been installing heating systems at 80-60, so with a mean water temperature of 70, and then 70-50 with a mean water temperature of 60. And predominantly the 60 mean water temperature are newer properties, so they've got some insulation in there. But that means that the radiators have then been sized for a 60-degree mean water temperature. So it's important that if you're going to fit a heat pump in there, that you've got to do your calculations, because the radiators may be undersized because they've been right on the limit of the 60 mean water temperature, where we want to drop down to 50. If you're then supplying those radiators with micro-bore pipe, you've then got to decide whether you can get enough flow to each radiator. I think if you ask manufacturers, they probably say you need to replace pipework. In the paper, we do say you can add additional equipment that could resolve the problem. Whatever the installer does, he's always going to be taking a risk with the micro-bore that you can get enough flow to there. You can imagine once you start ripping the boards up, you don't really know what's under there till you do that. But prior to that, you've got to give the consumer a quotation to say how much it's all going to cost. So it's quite difficult to advise people on this. There's mixed information out there that some say you can get it to work with micro-bore, but then you've got to add additional components. If you probably ask the manufactured equipment, they would say we want a minimum size of 22 mil for the flow and return and 15 mil to the radiators. And that's probably moving forward. What we're trying to recommend to people is that, if we're putting in new systems, size of the system correctly, radiator sizes, pipe sizes, to make sure you don't get any problems and you haven't got the consumer coming back saying, this system at low temperatures doesn't work correctly.
And if there is still a sort of communication piece to be done there, who should be leading on that then, Steve? Whose job is it to start getting those messages across? I think installer, the manufacturer, the industry-wide. Who should be leading on this?
I think it's the install. It's an industry-wide type thing, so the industry has to lead on this. And all the things we tend to go to government for. We see a lot of white papers out there that highlight things, but they don't really sort of give the solution. So I think as we move forward with our systems group, we'll tend to offer solutions to the problems that we've highlighted. I also think when you raise these things, we got Dan Foss in today. It does drive innovation when you highlight these things. We tend to see companies come along and say, if you've got micro-bore pipework, fit one of these and it'll solve all your problems, and And as long as it does, that's great. But so I think highlighting the problems helps us to improve things, get solutions on the table. And I think that's, you know, the industry should take responsibility for a lot of this.
Good, nice point. And yeah, identifying a problem does identify a market potentially for solutions, doesn't it?
Yeah,
to which the industry can respond. Nice point. There's business to be done fixing problems, isn't there, effectively?
Yeah, and we got 2 suppliers sat here today who are resolving problems by having solutions, and you know, they can put on the table and say these resolve these problems. So
excellent. And thank you. And Colin, so many homes today have combi boilers, yet the BEAMA paper suggests a return to hot water storage. Is this realistic?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I suppose if you're talking about getting homes to net zero and decarbonising heating, then almost everything you're talking about seems unrealistic. You know, it's just about will. I mean, you know, I think we've got to take it on the basis that, you know, this needs to happen. Therefore, you know, there's got to be the will to drive it. I mean, hot water storage is an interesting one, because if you look at changes in heating systems or in boilers, you know, there was a big change towards condensing boilers, and that was driven by regulation. And there's been a big change towards combi boilers, and I think that's largely been driven by consumers, because, you know, they appreciate the benefits of instant hot water and reclaiming some space in the house. So I think the challenge is to make them aware of the benefits in the future, because, you know, hot water cylinder is a hot water is a energy storage device, essentially. You know, and I mean, it's interesting. There was a discussion in Scotland that I was in recently. They were talking about, you know, excess of hydro generated electricity that could be just dumped into people's cylinders if they had them. You know, so there's a you know, clear benefit there, and obviously renewables can offer that solution. So I think, you know, people need to know what the benefits are, and then government need to think, actually, what is our primary policy? You know, do we want to try and displace hot water because we know the solutions are there, and do we want to put the levers in place for that to happen, or do we want to commit to 23% more hydrogen or electrical infrastructure, or whatever it is, to deliver that in the future? You know, I think what we're saying is, you know, there's a lot of practical difficulties, but I think we just need to look at what those practical difficulties are compared to the other practical difficulties, and consider what's best for the future.
Excellent. Yeah, and some strategic choices to be made, perhaps made by whom might be the question. But so yeah, nice. Some real meaty stuff in play now. So Neil, sort of following up a bit on some of what Steve talked about. So how much are current heating systems actually a barrier, an obstacle to future heat pump installations?
An interesting question, really. There are obviously some differences between systems that are used with a combination boiler or condensing boiler. A combi, for example, doesn't have your heat storage, your hot water storage, excuse me. And then as a result of that, you end up with in smaller new build places that there isn't necessarily even the space within the property to reinstall that sort of hot water storage. I'm sure Colin and Steve are much better people to answer that question rather than myself. So for me, it's not necessarily the technology that's currently in place that's the issue. It's more about whether or not the heat pumps can be installed within existing buildings. And that's really a challenge for the heat pump industry to develop maybe heat pumps which work with higher temperatures. I know that's currently being looked at, and bringing the cost and aesthetics down for heat pumps and making them easier to place on some of the smaller properties that we have over here in the UK. I guess the other really big challenge is having the people trained for installation of heat pumps. And I guess that comes down to the fact that we've had so many boilers installed for such a long period of time that we've got, I believe, around about 100,000 boiler installers in the UK, and only around about 10,000, I believe, heat pump installers. So there's a big question of training there.
Excellent, nice point. And actually, we have lost your video, actually, Neil, but we can hear you perfectly. So,
okay, that's good, because I've lost Stephen Collins. So,
right. Well, in the
we're
nicest
doing well.
possible way, your voice rather than your face is more useful to us, if you take that as a kind comment. But yeah, no, interesting point. And the first webinar in the series with BEAMA was around heat pumps and those 600,000 installation numbers, and just exactly how the industry is hopefully going to upskill and upgrade in readiness for that, or not, as the case may be. So in this round of looking at the challenges and the obstacles, Mike, lastly to you, currently we seem to, I mean, it sounds like a lot of negatives, but we have a lot of heating systems that are less than perfect. So why is this? So I'm asking really to point the finger. Is it a general skills? Is it a general skills issue, or, as you implied a little earlier, lack of consumer demand? And by demand, often we mean spend. I.e., they're not necessarily, they don't understand the differentiation between one offering and another. Therefore, they're not prepared to put up the money to create the demand for better systems. So is it skills or is it demand primarily?
No, I think I'd have to fight the corner of the installers and say it's not a skills issue. It may be an awareness issue from both an installer, and a consumer side of things. It's been a long time. I don't know how the colleges and all that are doing, but the technicalities of ensuring that a heating system's running efficiently isn't massively complicated. I think it's more a time, and then thus as a result, time becomes cost, which is something that the consumer, the homeowner, needs to be made aware of. They need to understand the benefits. I mean, we talk about TRVs, obviously it's a big part of our business and what we do, but it's very much, I believe, an afterthought. People will spend a lot of time specifying and a boiler, but they won't put any thought into everything else. And in order for a boiler to run efficiently, the rest of that heating system has to be set up correctly. The actual efficiency of your boiler is directly related to the efficiency of the rest of the system and how it's set up. Now it may be something so much as sizing radiators or calculating heat losses for rooms. I think that's definitely, with what I've read and what I understand with heat pumps coming forward, the actual heat lossing and the sizing of the radiators and your heat loss calculations are going to be far more important, or perhaps maybe not so far more important, but have far more focus put on them now than perhaps sizing correctly for boiler installs has been in the past. So I think as the technology changes, yes, awareness is going to be driven up, but we've got a lot of existing properties that could be running more efficiently. And it comes down to boiler changes. When you change a boiler, how often do people look at the heat emitters, the radiators, the TRVs? You may change a 15-year-old boiler and leave a 25-year-old radiator in place that's not running efficiently, that needs cleaning out, and TRVs that aren't functioning to their best. As with anything manufactured, over time, performance degrades. There comes a time where everything needs to be replaced, and I think it's awareness of that, and that comes down to manufacturers like ourselves communicating with our customers and potential customers out there, trying to educate them on better solutions. I feel a bit evangelical about it, to be honest, with balancing heating systems. Sometimes think people get sick of hearing me talk about it, but it is such a simple thing to do that can have such a large impact on the efficiency of the heating system that for it not to get the focus it deserves is almost criminal. It needs more. We need to push the awareness of it, and alternative methods. As I mentioned earlier, talking about the different TRV technologies, an automatic balancing TRV instead of balancing on the lock shield, presetting and having that react to pressure fluctuations in the system can make a huge difference to how your system runs. And it also ensures that when a homeowner takes a radiator off the wall, for example, to decorate, and then puts it back on, nobody, and I feel fairly safe in saying that, would ever go around after taking a radiator off and putting it back on, would go back and rebalance their heating system to account for that. Simple things that can be done through the life of your heating system can knock that out of balance.
Sure.
There's technologies and solutions in place that can really change that. But yeah, in regards to your question, I think it's not so much a skills issue. It's definitely lack of consumer demand or awareness. Yeah, and it's just something I think manufacturers and the industry need to work on.
Good, and good to hear you fighting the installer's corner, not perhaps entirely surprising. But just as a follow-up to that, and we've got a nice number of questions already coming up. If you've just joined us, do pop your audience question in the Ask a Question button at the bottom. We already have a few. If I could just follow up there on the question I've been asking Mike, to the others there, maybe Colin, Steve, Neil. So is it realistic to think we can persuade consumers to get their system improved as a standalone efficiency measure? Are we anywhere near getting them to do that kind of thing, as opposed to wait until the boiler packs in and they're having some wholesale kind of rejig anyway? Colin, can we get them to see that as a benefit in itself?
I think so. I mean, we've done this with installation for years and years of offering financial incentives to get it done, because people don't place enough value in it in itself. So you need money in it. I think the problem with system improvements is that even though we know that they can save money and reduce fuel bills, that there aren't any incentives for them. And a lot of boiler installations are distressed purchases. I think it's about 70% or something of a distressed purchase. So people want their heating back on and the installer out of the house, really. And a consideration of making the system as good as it can be is very much secondary. So maybe that's the point where you provide financial incentives and you empower installers to be able to say, right, I've done your heating system, I've got your heating back on, I can come back in a few weeks' time and optimize your system, and there'll be a grant for it, and I can arrange that for you. Making things work in that way is just something that never quite seems to happen. And I just think that's a shame, really. I think if we can think through the ways, rather than having a set of building regulations with some things like balancing, where, the Boiler Plus review in 2018, it more or less said balancing is really already required in the building regulations. Not many installers are doing it, but we're not going to do anything about it. So why have things in there that are not going to be enforced properly? Maybe for good reasons, because of the extra cost. Rather than think, well, if that's something that's not happening, maybe we need to put some incentives in there. We need to empower installers to be able to draw in those financial incentives. We just need to think about how we can make it work.
Cool. Nice point about there's a good time for the upsell, if you like, and especially if there's some carrots rather than sticks to incentivize everybody involved to try and make that extra purchase or that upgrade or that enhancement or improvement, all those positive words that should bring the benefits. So now if we get into the audience questions, so as I said before, you pose them, I'll ask them, they'll answer them. And so I'll pick, there's a couple of specific ones I'll just grab first. There's one mentioned in the chat, really. I think these are for you, Mike, off what you said, but there's one from Mark Han in the chat who says, shouldn't it be preset LSVs rather than TRVs, so the TRV is freed up to perform over its full range or close to it? So I think that's one for you there, Mike.
Yeah. So I've not muted myself, have I? You can hear me. Yeah. Mark. I think the real benefit of having the presetting on the TRV side of things. If you take, we manufacture a product called the RAS-B2. It's a differential pressure control TRV, so it will react to increases in the pressure on the inlet side to the radiator and limit the flow through the radiator, so you never exceed the maximum sort of design flow for that radiator. The best way of doing that would be via the TRV side, in order to maintain the authority and the control over the flow rates through the rad valves. But yeah, the idea of a preset lock shield valve, it's an interesting one. We've been manufacturing presettable TRVs for many years, and in fact it's only just now that we've shrunk down, if you like, the technology for the differential pressure control valve inside of a TRV to be available on the domestic side of things. So I think it's definitely it's an interesting question, but I think I'll have to bow to the experts at Danfoss in our product development team as opposed to myself as to a technical argument. But I hope I've given my best explanation as I can there.
Excellent, thanks. And yeah, by all means, follow up with the tech team as you suggest. So picking up another question now, generally from David Patia, he says, there are huge velocity and resistance differences between old systems at 80-70, then changed to 80-60 with condensing boilers, meaning lower system resistances, and now we're suggesting maybe 55-50, resulting in potentially very high resistances. David says, a typical plumber doesn't understand this, so some retraining will be necessary. How do we educate a plumber who is set in his ways? Maybe Steve, I think that picks up on some of the things you were talking about. Would you maybe like to kick us off in terms of if there is a re-education job to be done, how do we do it and where do we start?
Yeah, I think training courses for installers is something that we have to have. There is courses being developed currently that cover these topics, and we have some involvement in that, and we're hoping that those are going to be issued in the near future. The problem is then how we incentivize the installer to take the courses. So, online courses or wherever they're going to be, because you imagine they're very busy, they're installing boilers every day or doing repairs. So and then you take the time out of their day, which they don't get paid for, to go on a training course. So I think, again, it's something, once we've got the training courses in place, the industry needs to have a look how we encourage the installer to do these, to complete the course, so they understand the problems that have been explained in the chat.
Yeah. Do you feel there's still a step really to be taken to get onto that more positive footing about upskilling and training and education, in terms of it being an opportunity rather than, as you implied, a day not working and not earning, and therefore, a necessary evil, if you like? Do you think the industry is yet to really get on a positive foot and seize that opportunity?
Yeah, I think from our side, we always encourage installers to go on to manufacturers courses, for example. So if you're installing heat pumps, it's always a good idea to go and learn from the manufacturers, see the products, how they come apart, what they're expecting you to do to install them, be able to ask questions. And if we can include some of the issues of the heating systems on those courses as well, then you're actually saving the installer time, saving them problems, and saving them customer complaints. So it's a multi-pronged approach, really, is to say, this is when we're doing apprenticeships, these are the courses available, you should be taking them, you should have a qualification in it. I know there's quite a lot of people talking about skills cards and things like that. That may be something else that we have to look at. So you can, when you're a consumer, you can see what's on the card. So again, industry approach, we need to have the stuff in place first, really, and then to move it on forward as we're discussing here.
Excellent. And then taking another question now we have from Rob Whitney, whom you may have heard on the controls webinar, excellent, the other day. What about VDI 2035 methods for water quality, thermal fluids, and glycol? Might this be one for you, Neil?
I guess it probably is, yeah. There's a lot of misconception in the UK about VDI and what VDI 2035 is. It's a code of practice used in Germany by German installers on German systems. A lot of people think that UK systems are exactly the same as German systems because they have a boiler and pipes and radiators. They're not the same. There's lots of differences, some subtle, some less so. The point of the debate we're having today is what we can do now rather than necessarily wait to the future. VDI 2035, the main thrust of this is that you use system design to control oxygen being the most important element to control in terms of corrosion. So therefore, that question should be around new build rather than necessarily systems that are already installed. If you go even deeper into 2035, they actually state that you should be limiting the amount of underfloor heating you use, for example, plastic pipework, which is something that we are intending to do a lot of in our quest for net zero here in the UK. So at this point in time, I think the debate absolutely has to concentrate on what we have, not some future solutions that would necessitate the need to redesign systems, start changing the way that installers connect pipe work and soldering and push fit. And that's a whole bigger debate for the industry.
Excellent. And I think there's another question there. Maybe this actually it's from Malcolm Watkinson, but he's asked, are there any recommended online resources about the various balancing techniques for installers? I would suggest also the panel might potentially want to pop a comment on there as well. You could type, I see Rob Whitney's already suggested, look at the Reeducation TRVs, which have a balancing insert and a TRV setting up. But maybe the panel might like to add a typed comment there in the chat or directly on the question, as much as answering it directly on screen, because it might be useful for them to be able to see names and links and things. So do continue popping your questions in the bottom. And I've got a couple now. Although Neil has said, obviously, we are dealing with the here and now, what we can do. In this perhaps last few 5 or 10 minutes, I'd actually like to walk it around the panel and ask them a bit about where they see we're going. So if you are getting your future gazing glasses on, you know, so fast forward 5 or 10 years, what do we think the market is actually going to be looking like for heating systems? So maybe Colin, if you'd like to kick us off 5-10 years, if we do some of these things we've been talking about, if we get this kind of growth and demand and installation, what might we be looking at in 5 or 10 years' time as the future scenario?
I think "if" is the key word there, really. Yeah, we got a plan for the future that's set out in the heat and building strategy and the hydrogen strategy, but there's a lot of big things in there, and still at this stage really big unknowns. You know, I mean, they're saying there's going to be a strategic decision on use of hydrogen for heat in 2026, around about the same time. They may be asking for all boilers to be hydrogen ready. Mm-hmm. You know, and to my mind, that's almost like a reason for not much to happen in the next 5 years. I know there's a lot planned on the side as well, but I think, you know, hydrogen's attractive because the idea that you can change over a gas boiler to a hydrogen boiler, and that's going to be sort of easy and you know, familiar for everyone. But if we're not actually going to have a decision for another 5 years, and that could be in a different parliament, then that really just puts a hold on everything. It puts a hold on people's motivation, you know, to change or to redo things. So I think the key is going to be the point at which, when you are looking to change your current boiler, that an installer is going to come around and give you options. They're going to say, well, actually, we need to upgrade your system because you'll get the benefits and that'll be right for the future. And these are the options I can offer you. But if that incentive's not there, if we're still sort of holding off on key decisions, it's going to be difficult to see that change happening quickly. It does, you know, this is why I think, again, the systems side is quite attractive, because we know they'll be ready for the future. Yep. We know they'll offer benefits now, and we know how to do it. So if we put the effort in the next 5 years into the changes in the systems and the overall efficiency of buildings, then that's something we can do. And then it doesn't become a sort of, you know, everyone's sort of hamstrung to wait and see whether we're going to have hydrogen or in a particular area if there's heat networks or whatever. You know, get on and do the things we can do.
Steve, maybe I wonder if you could comment on that. Do you think there's a danger that we have sort of almost too many things in the pipeline and there's almost like analysis paralysis? People are scared of making a purchase or a choice now because they fear it will be obsolete or rendered obsolete by other stuff coming down the line. Do you think we're actually struggling with that a little bit in terms of accelerating uptake and growth?
Not yet, I don't think. I think we represent the majority of boiler manufacturers who are selling appliances in the UK, and all of those manufacturers, or the majority of them, sell a heat pump as well. So they're all prepared. They're all launching heat pump products at the moment to match up with the boilers that they sell. It would be very difficult for us to move away from hydronic systems apart from new build, which we may see in the future with, you know, super insulated properties, if you can get the house builders to agree to that. So it's the technology that we have today is what we have. We've tried to find new technologies when we looked at SAP 11, and there's not much new technology about. We've got heat pumps, we've got hydrogen ready boilers. We wrote to government saying that we could have the hydrogen ready boilers by 2025. So we're waiting for government to decide what to do with that. We've got, as you've seen, prototypes being put out there. The H100 project starts in Scotland in 2023, which will be 300 houses on the hydrogen network. And all these things, I think, are going to be a mix. Some people go heat pumps, some people go hydrogen ready boilers. People might even go hybrids. We also think hybrids are a good opportunity for people because it's easier to fit a smaller heat pump to an already installed boiler. So, but the government doesn't recognise that at the moment. So that's a little bit of work that we're trying to do as well. So
interesting. Yeah.
Mix of technologies in larger built up areas. You may see heat networks more predominant. So
sure.
It's horses for courses, I suppose.
Sure. No, there's no one size fits all solution.
Not at the
so
moment.
it's all in play. But Neil, I think we temporarily lost
Yeah.
Mike. But Neil, if I had to come to you and say, so design, engineering, products, performance, just tell me where you think innovation might be going. How's that going to evolve in terms of kit and tech? 5 or 10 years, what do you see as exciting in the innovation space, maybe?
Okay. Just really to reinforce what Colin was saying, I actually agree that I don't think the next 5 years is going to see much change to where we are now. If you look at building regs, we're not expecting Part L until summer next year. And then there's a transition period. So new build have got another 18 months in which to effectively build to the old regulations. So I think in 5 years' time, we're going to be seeing much of what we have here. I do think that hydrogen will play a much bigger part in the UK strategy. Hydrogen ready is a statement that's branded about a lot. At the moment, we're looking to blend hydrogen in. And if you look at the fact that we're going to blend at 22%, again, I think Colin mentioned that doesn't mean much change because in the 1970s, we were using coal gas and this blended hydrogen up to those sorts of levels anyway. So most of the system is ready for that. So I think that's going to be the technology that will probably be used in retrofit. Obviously, we are going to see heat pumps coming into new build, but the real challenge is going to be moving that technology into a retrofit environment. And if anywhere, that's exactly where you're going to need some innovation coming out of industry. And innovation also means the ability to manufacture at a lower cost, the ability to install a lower cost as well, because they're very, very key drivers. You're going to need to be able to getting the noise down from a heat pump. I have a neighbour up the road that has a heat pump that sounds like a helicopter taking off every time I walk past his house, and I can't imagine what that would be like in a row of terraced houses walking down the middle of a residential street. So all of those things need to be addressed. I do think there may be some differences in the UK to Europe. We're seeing far greater proliferation of heat pumps on the European market. And interestingly, I was on a similar debate with a European audience only last week, and there was a push to actually have heat pumps made more aesthetically pleasing, because if everybody's going to be having a heat pump sitting outside their property, they want them to look nice. And the comment there was that we need to get to a point where this becomes the must-have latest device, so that people actually go and make the decision to have a heat pump installed rather than to go out and buy a new car to show their neighbours. So lots of things that need to be done, but I absolutely, at this point, I'm unconvinced that it's down to technology and innovation to drive this. There's a lot more things that need to be put in place and understood before heat pump technology can really take off.
Good point. And in terms of scaling the innovation, in some cases we already have, as well as the innovation coming through. Some of that comes down to cost. Nice point about the aesthetics, making it aspirational, the must-have gadget. You want it effectively to go viral. So we are down to the last couple of minutes then. So if I just want to bring Colin and Steve back in quickly, I've got one final question for you, and I want to flip it on you really. We've been talking from the industry perspective, and you are representing, your voice is representing the industry. Just step the other side of the counter for a final comment, please. As consumers, so the consumer of today and tomorrow, what should they be demanding and expecting from a system? So first Steve and then Colin. So just wear your consumer hat for a moment. As a consumer, where are you hoping things are going?
Yeah, I hope that we've got installers that are aware of all the additions and modifications that need to be made to the system to make it as efficient as possible, and then the future, ready for the future, so it's not going to cost them again in the future. That's probably the key thing that we want to be saying to them. The radiators are sized correctly, the pipes are sized correctly. If you decided that, if government decided we need to go all the way down the route of heat pumps or low temp, we're going to put these low temperature systems in, which make things more efficient and save you money. If you spend this money, then we need to make sure that you're not going to spend it again in the future.
Exactly. Spend well once and not repeatedly. So Colin, final point from you. Wearing a consumer hat, as a consumer, what are you hoping the industry is going to be bringing you over the next 5 or 10 years?
I think two things. I think there's got to be a focus on comfort as well as efficiency, and I think that's something that a lot of consumers just live with. The fact they've got some rooms are too cold and some rooms are too hot, and they have to manipulate the controls because they don't necessarily know how to work them correctly. So I think better comfort in homes as we go forward would be a good thing. But I think the essential thing, it echoes what Steve said, really. We need as industry to be offering the right solutions, for the future, and government need to be offering incentives, where those solutions, don't seem obvious, but they're going to be essential for the future. I think consumers have got to rely on industry to provide them with the right things, and I think we've all got to make sure that we are doing that.
Excellent. Good point to finish on. And I'm afraid we are out of time. There is one question in the box there's still left from Kim Betty that we didn't get round to. If any of the panel has a second to type an answer, that would be terrific. Thanks, because we're out of time. So it's just closing from me. It's a big thank you to all our panelists, Steve, Colin, Neil and Mike, who is still there, I believe, in the chat, although we can't actually see and hear him on screen at present. And of course, our series partners at BEAMA. To yourselves, virtual audience out there on Crowdcast, for your comments, your questions, and loads of good points in the chat as well, points of information and links. A reminder to check out elementalexpo.com, the online community for professionals focused on innovation, heat, water, air, and energy, the vital elements within the built environment now and in the future. As I said at the top of the show, find a full diary of events on the website, host of upcoming webinars. There are 2 more in this excellent Zero Carbon Homes series with BEAMA. You can also share the link to this session and any others after the event. Same link as you used to log in for a colleague or a customer or a client or a supplier, anybody else you think who might want to check it out. And there's a back catalogue of all the other webcasts available on demand. So thanks once again to the panel, Steve, Colin, Neil and Mike. That's it for today. I've been Jim McClelland, editor at SustMeme. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank
Bye.
you.